Hi, this is Shadi, and today we will go back and discuss Aikido. It's been a while, and it always seems that there is something that's hidden or untapped in this sense. The Aikido curriculum originally was absolutely massive in terms of chokes, sutemiwaza, and now today I will show hip throws. It seems that with the years, Aikikai seems to become very purist in terms of philosophy and in terms of expression. You see, for example, Doshu, or the grandson of Morihei Ueshiba, you see here in front of you. His demonstrations become more simpler and simpler, basically sticking to the 5 techniques and maybe an Iriminage or a Kaitenage and a Shihonage, but basically that's it. There's just a lot of stuff that are being left behind. When we talk about Koshinage now these days, you see this one here in front of you looks very much like a Sode Tsurikomi Goshi, but off the wrist rather than the sleeve, because in Aikido you roll up your sleeves and show your forearms for all the grips that are available or in part of the system. So today what we will do is go through a Christian Tissier, which is my professor that gave me my black belt, fun fact, and go through a demonstration of 1985 of all the variations of Koshinage, because very similar to the Kodokan, Koshinage in Aikido is a huge umbrella term and it has a lot of variations. So let's begin. So the first one here you see in front of you looks like a very standard or basic ukigoshi. I would call it ukigoshi rather than ogoshi, because he's not actually lifting him up all his weight and then slamming him down, but rather uke is literally floating off his hips, hence the name ukigoshi or floating hips. Floating hips is Jigoro Kano's favorite technique and does it from a left-handed stance, like you see here Christian Shihan is doing it. Also in Nage no Kata, ukigoshi is pretty much there. A lot of claims say that Jigoro Kano invented actually ukigoshi, but there is no evidence that it's being done before. But I'm sure a lot of people shooting for hip tosses have ended up with ukigoshi, especially if they are short in stature. So saying that he invented it, I wouldn't put all my money on it, but it is part of the Nage no Kata, the first technique of Koshiwaza in the 3 techniques or the Koshiwaza series. So the first one here, you see Christian Tissier ukigoshi. You see Yoko Okamoto also do in Aikido the ukigoshi, but it's rarely done. Usually the sode here. So let's continue here. I would say this is more of a tsurikomi goshi rather than a sode. Here, this one, it's you cross the sleeve. This is more of a sode tsurikomi goshi. The first one, I would say it's a tsurikomi goshi the way he lifted, but he didn't cross actually uke sleeve. So let's see. This is sode tsurikomi goshi. Sode is the sleeve, tsurikomi is lifting and pulling, and goshi is hips. So you have to kind of try to cross uke sleeve to the other side and then throw them. But the first one here you saw Christian Tissier do was actually the way you lean to the side with an angle, he was doing to the other side, but the uke's arm left to its original side of his body. So I could say it's a blurred between sode tsurikomi goshi and tsurikomi goshi. So this is sode. I will show tsurikomi goshi. Here you see in front of you, you just extend your arms and then you let them roll off your hips, like punching down almost the mat with your lapel hand. This is tsurikomi goshi. Sode, you actually cross the sleeve to the other side. I would say the first one is kind of like a tsurikomi goshi, but Tori is actually leaning to the other side. That's how I would put it. The second one, as we saw, like he grabbed the lapel from on top of the shoulder, was Sode 100%. Here you see tsurikomi goshi is also a part of the Nage no Kata, which is the 3rd technique of the Koshiwaza series. He starts with ukigoshi, haragoshi, and here we see tsurikomi goshi. So here we continue We see that this is the standard Koshinage that we see a lot today in demonstrations. We call it in Judo the Koga Sodetsuri Komigoshi. So here we see there are multiple entries to it. Obviously, it's made famous in Judo by Toshihiko Koga, Olympic champion. This is a clear and prime example of how Aikido can, be introduced into the world of Randori. It doesn't have to be like this violent, I wouldn't say violent, but this like powerful, explosive type. It can always stay like a Kakari Geiko style of sparring, or like soft sparring with like a predetermined grip, very similar to belt wrestling, because I'm sure a belt wrestler in Shiram or Shima or anything against an untrained thug, if he clinched and got his preferred belt grip, I'm sure he can do a lot of damage. So I'm sure if you can like determine like only one grip for Aikido and then proceed to do like very light sparring, going for only Aikido techniques, I think you can create something very good and useful. Don't design championships, for your peace argument. But this is a prime example of Aikido can have Randori and have its technique being very successful. Here you see from a rear choking scenario, a Sodetsuri Komigoshi, how he crosses Uke's arm. Here is another example. He grabs both wrists. Sometimes we do Sodetsuri Komigoshi with both the sleeves. Here we see, this is actually Seoenage. Here we see off the shoulder, loading on the back and having his arms stretched out. This is actually a variation of Ippon Seoenage. Let's check it out. Here you see the arm is not necessarily curled like flexing the bicep like you see traditional Ippon Seoenage, but here it can be also stretched out, as you see here in front of you. This is a variation of Ippon Seoenage, as you saw here. So I know Seoenage is a teiwaza, it's not a hip throw, but there is a huge contact with the hips, so it can blur the edges of terminology. Here you see this one is actually an Aikido throw. There is Jujinage. Here you see you cross the arm, but Christian Tissier did it the same way, but inserted his hips, which is pretty cool and pretty unique to Aikido. So here, this one also is pretty cool. Here you see the Aiki Christian Tissier logo. So like I said, the Aikido curriculum seems to be dwindling more and more. Like if you see the Ueshiba demonstrations, like I would say the founding family, a lot of techniques I have seemed to be getting forgotten. Like the chokes, I've showed them before in my video. There is Kubishime. I also showed that Minoru Mochizuki tried to put in the curriculum a lot of Sutemiwaza sacrificing techniques, because I do believe that they do flow with the expression of Aikido. Those big circles that are being drawn, finished by Sutemi, would keep the flow, would keep the harmony, would show a more beautiful and more dynamic Aikido, and no, not much strength needed like these hip techniques where you have to actually lift someone on your hips. So I do say there is a lot of how do you say, potential in Aikido to have its own expression, but at the same time share all these old jujutsu techniques. So reducing the curriculum to like the very basics is, in my opinion, a bit unfortunate. So this is it. If you have anything else to add, let me know down below. Also, consider supporting me on Patreon. I have exclusive content for the patrons only. And also, don't forget to check out Josh Simon's shop for historical t-shirts and articles. This was Shadi, and thank you for listening.